Hey everybody, welcome to the RMC Experience, RMC Studios' newest podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Dan Hutchinson.
I'm Rachael Siegel.
And we're both teachers here at RMC. We've been here for a couple of years, and we've also been professional musicians for quite a long time. Throughout our run of this podcast, we're going to be talking about various topics about music. We're going to have as many guests on as we possibly can. We'd like to begin our program today by taking in an RMC special report. These are some of the goings-on about RMC. Throughout this year, we're going to have a few events, and we have the dates for them already, so you can save those dates coming up. First off, we have our Rocktober party and open mic. This is going to be at the Garwood Recreation Field on October 22nd, 2021, from 7 to 9 p.m. It is basically our RMC Halloween party and open mic. If you've been to any one of the RMC Halloween parties before, you know how amazing it is between the mummy wrapping contests, the escape room that we had. We have a bunch of things going on, and it's going to be even bigger this year now that we're moving it over to the Garwood Recreation Field. Definitely not an event to miss. On Saturday, December 11th, 2021, at the Hamilton stage of the Union County Performing Arts Center, we have another Alone Together concert. This is where students will perform with the RMC teacher band, songs of their choice. They will get to basically tag out one of the members of the band and perform their song alongside a group of professional musicians. And this is going to be filmed. I think it's also going to be streamed. Yes, it is also going to be streamed. This is definitely also not one to miss. Really, all of these events are not to be missed. They're amazing events. RMC Studios has been always upping our game as far as performance opportunities go. On March 5th, for those who are feeling very charitable, we have our Shine a Light concert, where students get to tag out members of our teacher band and shine a light on the charity of their choosing. This will also be recorded and live streamed. And then Saturday, June 4th of 2022, right at the end of our school year, also on the Garwood Recreation Field, we have the RMC Fest. Anyone who was at this past year's RMC Fest knows just how amazing the event is. We're going to have food booths, we have merch booths. It's going to be just like a huge rock festival.
It's just like Lollapalooza,
it is,
but in your backyard.
Yes,
unless you don't live in Garwood.
Yeah, if you don't live in Garwood, then it's not necessarily your backyard. It's like RMC's Lollapalooza, RM Solapalooza. RMPalooza. But RMC Fest, be sure not to miss it, Saturday, June 4th, 2022.
And if you don't take lessons, which you should, and want to be part of maybe a bigger, or honestly, if you do take lessons, but maybe want to be part of a bigger group of people, play with some of your best friends, RMC offers a variety of programs. So first we have our rock shop, which is held by a bunch of different teachers in the RMC studios. You can form your own rock band, write your own songs, learn how to play with other people in that kind of setting. We have a drum line, and it's a marching type drum line. So you've got your snares and your tenors and your bass drums, and learn how to play in a drum line setting, and that is with Harry. You've got your choir, which is with our lovely Liz. You've got the jazz ensemble, which Dan teaches, so you get to see that face.
We'd love to have you.
There's a music production and recording program where you learn how to produce your own music, record it, edit it, mix it yourself. That is by Gabe Gomes and EJ.
EJ and Gabe do a great job with that.
Yes. And then there's a songwriting program, so learn how to write your own music, which is pretty cool as well. And that is also run by EJ.
So we have a very special promotion, but you have to act fast. The entire week of August 9th, if you put in your promo code of August50, you'll get 50% off your first month of lessons or your first month of a group program. So definitely not a promotion to be missed. One of the biggest things that we wanted to talk about today is what makes a real professional musician. Rachael and I both work outside of the school as professional musicians. We play in various contexts. For example, I play at weddings. I do bars and restaurants. I do recording sessions for people. Rachel, you play in orchestras and...
Yeah, I do a lot of pit work in surrounding towns, like their high schools productions, and played in a few community orchestras and bands, and some chamber groups.
It's pretty safe to say that between you and I, we have a lot of experience in all sorts of performance contexts.
Yes, and all sorts of ensembles, too.
Yes. And as a result, we've kind of developed our perceptions of what seems to make the best professional musicians, both in the people that we've worked with, in ourselves, in perhaps some negative examples that we've seen. So today we'd like to talk about a few of the things that make a good professional working musician.
So we have taken like being a musician and broken it down into two categories. So you have the musicianship side, basically anything musical that makes you what you want to be, or like who you want to be as a musician. Does that make sense?
Anything that makes a talented musician, anything,
Yes.
all the skills that like
Yeah.
musically you need
Yeah.
to do it. And let's talk about a few of those now.
Okay.
So one of the first skills that I think is super important as a working musician, one of the biggest things that has helped me has been ear training. Being able to listen to, for example, a wedding song or a pop song, something like that, and being able to hear what key, like what the tonic note might be, and sort of matching that on my instrument as best as I can, as quickly as I can. A lot of people, when they're kind of searching for that tonic, they're playing a couple of random notes and everything, and who wants to hear like American Girl if someone's honking like 6 wrong notes before they finally hit the right one?
Yeah, but that also is more of on the side of improvisation.
I think so.
Would you say? Yeah, because my ear training, I'm not a great improviser. I'm just going to make that known now. But when I do ear training, it's mostly when I'm doing arrangements. So like, not pre-record or pre-written. But it's also, you got to know what notes go in the key, what notes work with other notes, chord structure. And sometimes you can throw all that theory and ear training out the window, but like for the most part, you got to know the basics of what's going to sound or should sound good.
Knowing intervals has really been what's helped me, like being able to kind of hear a note that I'm familiar with and go, all right, well, how far is that from the note that I'm trying to play? Like, if you can right off the bat, if someone gives you a note, like, ba, if you know how to get a third off of that, if you know how to get a fifth off of that, if you know how to, well, first off, if you can get a unison of that and just match the pitch, that's probably
number one. Step one.
Step one is like get the same pitch, and then if you can play around with it and get a different note that fits within the same key, it makes it much easier. You can locate your key much faster, and it's kind of like just it's like playing jump rope.
Are you gonna tell us how?
Yes. It's like playing double dutch, where you're kind of standing outside and you're like, all right, what do I do? All right. And then you see where the rope's coming around, which is you see your notes, you see what key you're in, and you're able to jump in and start playing right away. I know, it's a really weird visual, me playing double dutch. I usually just end up wrapped in the jump ropes.
I like that analogy. One of my favorite things about musicians, or music teachers, but probably musicians too, because a lot are just hand in hand, are music analogies. That's a good one.
We've had some weird ones though, right?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of. But I had a teacher. I had a teacher in high school. We were in marching band. He was a middle school teacher, and he was talking to the color guard, and he was like, "You guys have to cradle the rifle like it's a baby, and then you toss the baby." And we were like, "Why are we tossing children?"
That
one of my favorites.
One of my favorites. One of my band directors once said, "This piece of music, it's like you're a chef and you're making this salad, and you don't want to just jump in the middle of the salad."
Oh, because that would be bad.
Yeah, I mean, it would naturally be bad, but it feels like a mixed metaphor, something like that.
Oh, I love a good mixed metaphor.
Have you ever worked with anyone who just like straight up had like no experience ear-wise, like where it kind of felt like maybe more so tuning for you, like someone who just plays nothing but out of tune?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I've always been good at ear training. Like, I could listen to a melody and kind of like plunk it out on the piano, figure it out, and all that stuff. I've always been good at like that kind of dictation, not just like pulling it out of thin air. But intonation-wise, that's something I've always struggled with. But I got this thing called the tuning CD, which is basically just a drone in equal temperaments, and it's really fun. And you play your unisons, and you play your thirds and your fifths, and you like see how all of the notes interact. And
so it's one long note?
Yeah, it's like 3 minutes for the same. I'll show you it later.
That sounds riveting.
It's awful when you plug in your phone, and that's A is the first thing that appears, and you're like, here we are. Welcome.
Oh no, wait, do you have that saved on your phone?
Yeah, I do.
Does your car have Bluetooth?
Yeah, I do.
Oh my gosh, that's had to have happened. Like, you get in your car.
Oh, all the time. And with friends, it's the best, because they're like, here it goes. A is back.
Wait, is there something wrong with the car?
I have to figure out how to make it not part of the loop on iTunes. Yeah, I don't know how to do that. If anybody in the that listens to this knows how, drop a link or a description. Anyway, but since practicing, and it was actually the most mind-opening moment of mine when it came to intonation was I was in a jury in grad school. I think it was my first jury, and I was playing flute, and one of the teachers stopped me after the flute and was like, you know you're out of tune. That was unacceptable. Like, did you hear it out of tune? It freaked me out. That was the first instrument I was playing. I still had 3 more instruments to play, and now I'm in a panic because I'm playing out of tune. Which he should have wrote it down and then talked to me about it after. But after that, never had intonation problems. But I've played with a lot of shaky players, especially oboists who tune the band wrong or the orchestra wrong.
Ooh.
And we're all sitting there with our own tuners, and they're 20 cents flat or 20 cents sharp, and we're like, we all see it.
Which one's better? I know they're both. It's wrong to be sharp. It's wrong to be flat, out of tune, as far as the orchestra is concerned and everything. But what do you feel is better, being a little sharp or a little flat?
It depends on the instrument I'm playing. If I'm playing oboe, if I get tired, I start to play sharp.
That seems like the opposite, right? You get tired and you'd think that it would sort of open up and be flatter, but that's so weird.
I guess I over tighten, and that's my issue.
That could be a compensating thing.
Yeah, actually, I think I'd rather be sharp I'd rather be sharp on all of them because it's easier to fix it. Because my clarinet, it plays pretty in tune, and sometimes it's flat, but I can't push it in anymore.
Oh yeah.
And then same with
you have to pull. So
yeah.
if you're sharp, you can kind of pull your instrument
yeah.
a little bit apart.
Yeah.
I feel like when you have this sort of pre-written stuff, most of the ear issues are all with tuning.
Yeah.
But when you're improvising, most of the issues are just what note am I going to in the first place?
Yeah.
And I've played alongside some horn section guys that will start guessing somewhere in the beginning of the song what key they're in, what note they're playing, and they'll be done guessing 2 songs later.
One of my flute students, she's in the jazz band in school, and she had to improvise a solo. They made everyone do it, which I don't agree with. If someone doesn't want to improvise, I have no problems forcing kids to play in front of other people, but don't force them to improvise if they're not used to it. Teach them first, and let them get comfortable with it. But she had to do it at a concert, and I was like, all right, so here's what you remember. Know what key you're in, and make sure you're counting your measures. Because, if you know what key you're in, you can just play all your scales in that key, and most of the time it'll sound okay. But if you aren't counting your measures when the key changes, or the chord changes, you're out of luck.
Yeah, you're gonna be doing a lot of following.
Yeah.
One of the tricks that I kind of developed for that is when you're improvising, never play on beat 1.
That's smart. That's very smart, actually.
So when it changes, it's all right. Oh, this is different. Now I can try for something else.
Yeah, but also just know the tune you're playing really well, because if you know how it's supposed to sound, you'll know when it changes. It'll just be innate. Yeah.
The to what is a little what it changes to.
Oh, yeah.
It changes. Yeah, I know it changes here, but to what? That's really sort of the guesswork there.
Yeah, unless you're playing a pop song.
Oh, we always know what it's changing to. It's a 1-5-6-4 every single time.
Yeah.
Speaking of 1-5-6-4s, if you'd like to know more about those, feel free to ask an RMC teacher, or you can check out the RMC Studios website, where I discuss them in a fair amount of detail in my theory series.
I love that rhymed, sort of.
Theory series.
Kind of.
Yeah,
it
I guess
flowed.
that works.
It flowed in a way that I enjoyed. Speaking of theory, it is good to know theory. Not just the 1-4-5-6. Nope. Not just the one. Not just the one. I don't play a lot of pop music.
1-5-6-4?
Not just the 1-5-6-4. Sometimes it's just 1-5-4-1.
That's true. Or 1-4-5.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just good to know theory too. Like, I took a application of theory class in grad school, and it didn't have much to do with my thesis, because I did my thesis on performance anxiety, but for people who are like analyzing like music and doing an entire thesis on like a piece of work or something, basically the theory aspect of it, we were supposed to do like a biography of the composer, do a history of when the piece was written, be like, why do we think the composer wrote this then, and then do an analysis, which is basically just like looking at the chord structures and writing Roman numeral underneath it and being like, why do we think he went from the 5 chord to the 2 chord instead of going to the 4 chord? Getting into the real nuts and bolts of theory is hard. Like, that's stuff that we learn in when you're a music major in college and then in grad school. But knowing your basic 1 chord, 5 chord helps too, especially with mistakes, because a lot of editors make a lot of mistakes in music.
Oh yeah, and you can use theory to kind of go in and fix that. It's like there is literally no way that they would stack this diminished 7 with these 3 extra notes. There's something wrong here. We can either check another copy or do something else. That's kind of like a fun little Where's Waldo for us as musicians when we're looking at written music, finding those little typos.
We had in band and at Hofstra, the band director like knew a bunch of composers, and there was one time there was a mistake, and actually anytime there was a mistake he'd be like, I'm just going to call him up later after rehearsal or tomorrow, and then he'd come back and be like, by the way, this is the mistake, or it's correct. But one time he called one composer, I don't remember what the piece was, I don't remember what we were playing, who it was, called him up, left a voicemail, and then left a voice, like asking him the question, and then we played the piece for him on the voicemail. That was really cool.
I would have loved to have been there for that response.
I don't think he ever told us what the response was.
Oh no.
It's still in limbo.
It might still be sitting unopened in that guy's voicemail box.
That'd be sad. I'm assuming it's not, because I want to say like we did get a response for what the note was supposed to be or whatever the mistake was, but
not about an entire orchestra playing into a cell phone.
No.
Oh, bummer.
Wind ensemble. Or a band. It was a symphonic band, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, an entire band.
Yeah.
If you want to know the difference between a band, an orchestra, and a symphonic wind ensemble, ask one of the RMC teachers.
If you have questions about anything, ask one of the RMC teachers.
Absolutely. How to do your taxes?
Don't ask me.
Yeah, don't ask me either. What were we Theory.
Theory!
Music theory. Being able to know the inner workings of music itself, basically the understanding of how music works, will often do you more service than just kind of listening and knowing, having a good ear for it.
A lot of basic theory that, as a musician in the growing stages, middle school and high school, that you should know is like scales and key signatures.
Huge.
Because all your music that you're playing is scales and arpeggios. What's an arpeggio? Ask an RMC teacher. No, I'm asking you.
Oh, you're asking me what an
it,
RMC teacher is. Okay, so.
I'm asking you what an RMC teacher is.
You're asking me what an arpeggio is.
Yeah, explain to the
as
listeners
an RMC teacher.
what an
what an RMC teacher is, yes.
Yes.
An arpeggio is basically the most distilled form of a scale. You have all of those extra notes in a scale that say, all right, we're going to sort of portray this particular feeling, this particular emotion, but we can also kind of portray that exact same feeling in just 3 or 4 notes, either played simultaneously or one at a time. Usually it's 1, 3, 5.
That's basically just what your music is written of. Chords, either all together or broken up, and scales. So those are your basics, like what you should know theory-wise in the early stages of being a musician.
I think so.
What else would you say?
You mentioned counting a little bit earlier. I wanted to just sort of get back to that as far as like a rhythm standpoint, being able to properly count through your songs, because then, as we said before, you'll know where things change. You'll know when things are supposed to speed up, when tempos are supposed to happen. It kind of comes down to having a good, well-rehearsed sense of rhythm.
And sense of beat.
Yeah, sense of beat. Like knowing where that pulse is.
I'd say even the beat is, if I were to layer the most importance of, well, like if you're going to sit down and play something, I would say the beat has to be first. Because if Dan and I were playing a duet and our beats were totally different, it is not going to sound good. It's not going to be together. It's going to be very abstract. And then rhythm, because you could be playing all the right notes, but if the rhythm's wrong, you're wrong. And then notes.
You know what my favorite thing to do with my students is when it comes to rhythm? I totally agree with you, by the way, that rhythm actually is more important than the notes. Yeah. And the way that I demonstrate this is I will play for my students. I'll go over to the piano and I'll go, all right, what is this song? I'm going to play all the right notes and I'm going to play all the wrong rhythm.
That's fun.
And I go, ba-da-da, ba-da-da, ba-da-da. Da 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 dee na 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 na. And I'll say, all right, well, what is that song? And the kid will go, I have no idea. And then I will play the exact same song with the perfect rhythm, all the wrong notes. By the way, for those of you who are listening and are like, what in the world is that song?
Star Wars, right?
No.
That wasn't Star Wars?
No. It was Happy Birthday.
No way!
If you go back and listen to this...
I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to adjust it to the right rhythm.
It is Happy Birthday all wrong.
I thought it was Star Wars, which also sounded all wrong, but...
Exactly, but by having all of the right notes in the wrong rhythm, the song becomes less recognizable than having the right rhythm with all the wrong notes. Because I can go, I'm not going to try it now, but I could sing all of the wrong notes, but if it's in the right rhythm, you'll go, that was just a really bad Happy Birthday.
Yeah. Yeah. People are more in tune to notice rhythms. But it's funny, there was a challenge on the TikTok with the fingers, and a lot of people were arguing with musicians about it. And they were like, oh, no, I think it ended on the pinky, and that was the correct one, but everyone was like, no, it's not the pinky. And I could be wrong where it actually ended versus where people are arguing it. But I was like, you're not, they all were like, the rhythm is this, the rhythm is like this. And I'm like, you're not trying to figure out the rhythm. That's not what you're doing on your fingers. No, sorry. They were trying to figure out, they were using rhythm incorrectly. They were playing the beat, calling it rhythm, but what they were missing was one of the notes in the rhythm, and they were supposed to be doing the rhythm. So that's how it ended correctly. But they were like, that note doesn't exist, but it repeated itself, so it existed the first time when they did it, but not the second time, and I was like, this is why music education is so important.
Yes. And I don't know what makes me more uncomfortable about that, like the fact that people are debating music on TikTok, or the fact that you just referred to it as the TikTok.
I call it the tiki-taki sometimes. Follow RMC Studios on TikTok.
The TikTok.
On the tiki-taki.
Oh boy. So what happens if you are a professional musician on a gig, you're in the middle of it, and all of a sudden you hear a squeak.
And cry. Just kidding.
Or you hear nothing. Worst of all, nothing happens. Like you go to play your instrument, nothing. Or I think what's an even scarier sound for me, because I play saxophone and all these like metal instruments, is hearing a ping coming from the floor.
Oh, not just the metal instruments. My clarinet, flute, and oboe all have metal rods.
So you hear a ping, and you panic.
And you can't find what dropped.
Oh no.
It's the worst.
But we've had this happen. Instrument malfunctions. Something just straight up breaks on a gig.
I had an entire rod like this big, fall off my oboe in high school. The end screw. So, Selmer oboes. The like first oboe I had, the screws are not great. They're not good material. They fall out, come unscrewed very often. Music is all vibrations, and the vibrations cause screws to go wiry. But the Selmer ones were on next level. The screw fell out. The whole rod fell onto the floor. And I was like, oh no! I stopped the rehearsal. I was like, I need a screwdriver, please. Now I keep one in my case.
I keep a screwdriver now on my key ring. Actually, one of my students' parents does woodwork, works on a lathe, and he created a mini screwdriver that was like this hand-turned wood. It's like laminated so it doesn't scratch up, and it just sits as a keychain, and then you unscrew the top of it, and it stores like 3 or 4 screwdriver heads. That is like, don't leave home without it.
I'm gonna have to get a few of those because some of my cases are missing screwdrivers.
Oh, those are so useful.
It's good to always have a screwdriver in your case, but don't screw anything on your instrument unless you know what you're doing. Because I'm gonna take the oboe for example. The oboe has the most adjustment screws out of all of the woodwinds, and there are screws that hold things together, and there are screws that make the instrument do things. And the adjustment screws are the ones that make the instruments do things, and if you turn them the wrong way, the instrument can also stop playing, which is not good.
But what's worse, if you unscrew one of the screws that's just holding it together, you have a much bigger problem.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times I've been in the middle of a song, like playing at a wedding, getting ready for like a solo, and I'll see one of the saxophone's pads has fallen out of the cup of and fallen to the floor, and this scramble, the crawl that it takes to just grab one, and then one of the things I should really start carrying is a lighter, so that I can just melt the glue and put it back in. I've had to borrow lighters, but it's a very high pressure situation, and being able to do these instrument quick fixes in a high pressure situation is a huge skill for musicians.
Yeah. Another thing that's good to have, they sell these in stores, like just paper, if you're, like it's a powder paper, if your instrument gets sticky, but you can use $1, although like, that's technically not that hygienic, but you just stick it under the pad, you press it down and just pull, it usually unsticks it. And then same with if you get water in your key, that is awful when you're playing and then you sound like you're underwater. So you basically can just take your instrument, close all the holes, or put a piece of paper in there, close all the holes, and then blow the water out, and it should soak up on the paper. But also swab out your instrument after you play as well. I always clean your instrument after you play. Cause
I'm so guilty of not doing this. It's like not even funny. I shudder when I think about looking inside of some of my instruments. It's a bad habit, but when you play as often, like where you have to like, if you're doing double, triple headers in a day, and like you're doing like 3 shows, swabbing isn't necessarily the first thing that comes to mind. It should be.
You always do it at the end at least.
Yes, it absolutely should be something.
That could also really mess up your keys.
It can.
And keys are expensive, or pads are expensive.
If you'd like to play enough to mess up your pads, consult an RMC teacher. Come have some lessons with us. Oh my gosh. I don't think you have to do this as much, but I know that I do. Transposing.
Oh. Not on site.
Yeah. Transposing is, I think, my biggest just nemesis as far as like musician skills go.
We were required in my conducting class at Hofstra to take transposition quizzes. So we bought this like scale book. It's called Treasury Scales.
Oh, I love that book.
Light green book. Traumatized all of us. But our teacher in the beginning of class, he would be like, all right, this page, this scale, or like this study, you're going from trumpet to concert pitch. So you had to know, first of all, what the key of the instrument was, what the key of the instrument going to was, and how to get there. And they were timed quizzes too, and I was really good at them because I figured out a way to just visually figure it out. But a lot of my friends struggled. But it did help me in the long run because senior year in the opera pit, I had to play English horn and it was supposed to be a French horn part, and it was all different keyed horns.
Oh no.
And so I had to transpose all of it. And I was like, thank God for this class, because now I'm really good at it, and I can just do it easily. But sight transposing, like, immediately is kind of harder for me, especially the faster it goes. But if you sit me down, you're like, here's a piece of paper, can you change the key? I can, like that. And it also, I do that when I'm arranging too. I won't just put it in the key and then switch it on Sibelius.
You'll do all the individual transpositions by themselves.
Yeah.
Oh god. Well, that helps to sort of keep the range of the instruments too.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I'm going to give you the biggest issue that I have as a transposer, playing weddings, playing bar gigs. It is lead singers. Now, the issue is that there are some bands that in order to save the voices of the lead singers, they will tune all of their guitars down by a half
Oh yeah,
step.
you can't do that.
The keyboard player will tune the keyboard down by a half step by hitting a button. So we'll have a couple of like peg adjustments, we'll have a button adjustment. The drummer doesn't have to worry about transposing, they're not going to retune their drums, and then they look over at the horn section and go,
And then you're playing in 5 flats.
yeah, we're doing this a half step down. Which, I mean, in some cases, I'm a sax player, so I play in B flat. I play a B flat instrument, I play an E flat instrument. Guitarists like to play in E and B and A, which, if you're playing an E flat or a B flat instrument, that's 7 sharps or something. But if you learn a solo in 7 sharps and then say, all right, now get rid of all of them, it is definitely jarring. So there have been a number of solos that I've had to actually sit down and learn to transpose. Like, the Born to Run solo wasn't as bad, but the middle of scenes from an Italian restaurant was so hard.
Both of those solos kill me.
I think Rio, I mean,
that Rio
solo,
solo hurt too. That had like 6 or 7 sharps.
I should probably run through those. Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen, one of the most iconic saxophone solos of all time, especially if you live in New Jersey. Scenes from an Italian Restaurant by Billy Joel is, in my opinion, one of his greatest works.
That was my favorite song by Billy Joel. It's such a good song. It reminds me of Angelo's in Atlantic City. For some reason, that restaurant just comes to mind. That Italian restaurant is the restaurant I swear Billy Joel was talking about.
That is where all of the scenes take place.
Yeah.
But Rio by Duran Duran, phenomenal 80s solo that goes well out of the range of the instrument.
Oh, so high.
So maybe
high.
being able to transpose that down would probably be a blessing rather than a curse.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm currently working on, I arranged Imagine for flute trio, and I'm trying to turn it into a quartet without, and someone suggested doing piccolo on the solo, but I don't want just one person playing this, or not the solo, on the melody, and I don't want just one person playing the melody. So, like, I originally had it, like, looped around, and it was for a pre-recorded video, so, like, I could play with the sounds, but for live, it, like, didn't really work if people don't, adjust themselves. So I was like, maybe, like, I'm trying to get the melody up the octave so I can just do 3 flutes and an alto flute, but I can't find the right key for it, so that's been a lot of transposing, too.
yeah.
Trying to figure out what key I could jack it up, just the melody, and it won't go out.
So we've talked a lot about the different things that, as a musician, just pure musician, you should kind of know how to do to work and work consistently, especially around here. But there are things that, before you even open your instrument case, before you play your scales, before you know these chords or anything, that kind of gatekeep the entire music business, gatekeep the entire ability to work regularly. And I think those are really more aspects of professionalism.
Which was the second aspect that an hour ago you didn't get to hear. So if you are sitting on the edge of your seat, here's now your answer.
Some people are probably watching from like hanging out in their bedroom or something. They could be on the edge of their sheet. It could very well be the case. But,
a little bit of a lisp. Sometimes.
But different bits of professionalism really make a musician. You could be phenomenal with your ear training. You could put together chords like a madman or a madwoman.
You could be the best player in the world. If your attitude stinks, I don't want to sit next to you in an ensemble.
Exactly. Let's start with that. Attitude about playing, or attitude just in interacting with other people. Music is most fun when you're doing music with people, like sitting alone and playing one part and recording another part. Yeah, that's its own challenges. It's its own little bit of rewarding, but it's not really a living, organic experience without other players, without other musicians.
Something magical about sitting in a room with, like, I mean, you're not always sitting with your best friends, but sitting in a room with, like, your closest friends who are also musicians and just playing, like, really cool songs, it's just magical. It's so fun.
And being able to have that friendly dynamic, even if having that friendly dynamic with people whom you've just met, who are not really, who you would never really be friends with in real life, that you sort of come together with them with the music, and being able to interact and work professionally and have that sort of push forward attitude that I think that really expands your palatability as a musician. You
play better when you get along with the people that you're playing with. I used to teach in a marching band. I taught the front ensemble, which is like the mallets and the auxiliary percussion stuff. And sometimes those kids would fight because, you know, they're high school kids. And, like, your peers are your leaders, and that sometimes that's just a hard thing because they have to do some, like, they have to make some decisions that you might not like, even if they're your best friend. And sometimes that caused a lot of fighting because kids can't really process that yet. They haven't really, like, that's their first time really experiencing that. And a lot of my conversations with them were not about their notes, their rhythms, how to play in the marching band. Was, you guys don't need to be friends, but you need to get along because your work suffers when you're not getting along. It happened with the pep band too. When I was in Hofstra, there was a lot, like, there would be drama all the time, and I'm like, I sat down once at one of our basketball competitions, and I was like, we need to do something like team building. So we did a thing where you put, like, paper on the walls, and you would write something really nice and then fold it so no one else saw it, and then you'd have this beautiful thing of, like, really nice things for you. And I think it just boosts morale because if you're thinking about, like, what that person said or who wronged you or whatever, and you're not really focused on the music, it's gonna come across in your playing.
Absolutely. You can definitely hear people talk about not driving angry. I like to think don't play angry.
Although I have played some of my best stuff on the piano when I was sad. That hits different.
You're right. There's nothing quite like sad piano.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love that idea of the team building exercises. But
I love a team building exercise for anything.
That's true.
Any group of people that need to work together to complete a cause.
But when time is a factor, like if you're sort of like a freelance musician and you're playing with a group of people like right off the bat, and there's not time to really do a team building exercise, kind of knowing where you fit into that ensemble and being able to just get in there, interact as briefly and as positively as you can, and just doing what is asked of you with little to no, what's the word, guff? No, I guess.
I don't know what that word is.
Oh. I think I'm dating myself here.
You're a year older than me.
I'm not even
that old. A year and a
old.
month older than me.
And I'm totally like, I love the young people.
I think it's always important if you're going to come into a work environment, and this doesn't even have to be music, but like it's something that growing up as a musician, you could transfer to your other life, is just come in with a good attitude, come in prepared. And if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask them. There's in the Broadway world, there's a custom that if you come to sit in a pit, you always say thank you at the end, and like you did a good job. That's just like you're supposed to do it. It's just a rule that they have, and they remember that. And the way Broadway pits work is you're not auditioning for them. It's who you know.
Oh, absolutely.
They know how you play. They ask you to sub for them. You do a good job, they continue to ask you to come back. So a lot of that is just attitude. I mean, yeah, you have to be a good player. They have to know you're a good player because they're not going to put just anybody into a pit because that would anger a lot of fans. But your attitude is very, very much a part of that.
Now wait, who says the thank you and the good job? Is it the person who was sitting in?
Yeah.
Who thanks everyone around them and says good job,
yeah.
Or is it the people outside?
No,
the people in the pit who.
No. If you're sitting in the pit, if I went to see Aladdin in the pit, which is something I hope to do soon because they've been asking me, you say thank you and you did great. I did that for Anastasia. I've said it to everybody in the pit. I only had to say it to my teacher, but I said it to everyone. He was like, "Wow, look at you going above and beyond." I was like, "They all did a good job. It was so good. I can't wait to see the show."
Oh, that's great. This is one that really gets me. Punctuality.
Me too.
This is.
We're neurotic, notoriously always on time early people.
I think that comes with also having been marching band people.
Marching band. But I know a lot of people that were in marching band that still suck with time.
Really?
Yeah.
They always talk about, like, to be early is to be on time is to be late is inexcusable. Now, I mean, if anyone going by the transitive property knows that to be early is inexcusable, but...
Just always be there.
Yeah.
Never leave. Sleep in the pit.
I cannot tell you how many times I've factored in like over an hour of just extra time between travel, between like security check-ins for some of the higher profile gigs. I played a show at the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Really?
I did a show in the Egyptian temple room, you know,
Ooh.
the big one with all the glass panels on it.
That's really cool.
They had the stage set up and everything, and the security in there is incredible. I mean, it's exactly how the security for an art museum containing $1 million pieces should be.
Yeah.
But in order to get in with like 7 instrument cases and everything, they had to open every single one and go, "What's this?" That would be a saxophone.
Pay attention in school, please.
"What's that?" It's another saxophone. How about this? Is this a saxophone?
The child of that one.
Is this a saxophone? No, that's a microphone. I mean, they may not know their instruments, but they really know security. But that in itself took me about 30 minutes longer than I expected it to. But because I was there like 2.5, 3 hours early, knowing that it was such a high profile thing. It was the best possible.
What was that gig for?
So they were having their holiday party. The like docents and the staff and everything were having their big like Christmas party and everything.
They had it in the museum. That sounds
and they like actually they shut down that room to like visitors and everything. They still had visitors in the museum.
Oh, it really
They
stinks
were
for
walking
the people
around.
that still had to work and didn't get to go to that party.
No, but like everyone like had their breaks and everything and
Mm-hmm.
were able to go, and they had these big long tables set up. It was funny because at the time I had a Western Civ course that my professor was also a docent at the Met.
Cool.
So I'm up there playing, and my professor walks in and sits down, looks up at the band playing, sees me, and like comes up after a song. He's like, "How's it going?" It's like, "Hey, do I have an A?" Just double checking. Because he would often with the Western Civ courses, he would pick pieces out of the Met and like talk about them in relationship to the Western Civ class.
That's cool.
And he would point out all these different like pieces, and of course while I was working there, I started like taking pictures of the pieces that he was talking about. I'm like, "It's these, right?" It's like I have an A, right?
So we were talking about being on time, which is a great thing to be. There's nothing worse than just people that don't respect your time in general, because like I understand things come up. I have also been subject to things coming up causing me to be late, but I hate being late. So it drives me nuts. So like I try to always be early. My lessons in grad school, I always got there 20 minutes early because the guy lives like really like 40 minutes north, and I was like, I'm gonna leave an hour just in case there's traffic. But I had this one professor in college, and he did not know what time management was. And he would put out a schedule. He would email us all a schedule because he also let way too many people in the orchestra. And so we had her on a rotating schedule, and he'd be like, "We're doing this on this piece this time, this piece this time, this piece this time, this piece this time. You show up for your time. They're still working on the piece before you for another hour when I could have been doing homework or practicing." So that drove me nuts.
It's kind of a two-way street, because like if you're employed by somebody else, you always want to be early for the sake of you've been asked to do something and you're doing it. But additionally, if you are the person who's kind of in charge, you absolutely want to be there even earlier if you can, just to sort of facilitate everything. I've worked with people who have no understanding of time management, no understanding of putting in travel time.
Yeah.
So like we would have like a call time of like 7 o'clock to start. So I'm also in a barbershop quartet. We do a lot of vocal gigs, and we do a bunch of various different places. But I've been in vocal situations for a while, where we don't necessarily have to set much up, but we have to show up, and we have to be like dressed. There's been some times where we've had shows that our call time was 7 o'clock for a 7:30 hit, and 7 o'clock we'll show up, and we'll get a text from one person going, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm like this far from my house on my way," and they'll get there at 7:30. At that point, the one specific one I'm thinking of, he was at 7:30 when we were supposed to start singing. He was walking up to us, pulling his jacket on.
Oh boy.
Like his hat was in his teeth. And like he was just barely getting there to start the show.
That's a good way to get an injury too.
Yeah, there is nothing scarier as like a band leader or as like a musician in charge than to have a performance and have somebody like, are they gonna make it? Are they gonna make it? Are they gonna make it?
Yeah, I agree.
But things happen. Like there are times when like you're gonna hit traffic. Really badly, or something's going to occur personally, or something's going to happen where you're going to end up being behind, and the counter to that is communication.
Oh yeah. One time, I have two stories.
Okay.
So one has to do with communication, and the other one doesn't. So in grad school, me and a bunch of other people, like students, were playing a gig in a pit. And it was so fun. It was like all NJCU students, just like in the wind section, except for one Rutgers guy. But we had a rehearsal, an orchestra rehearsal that Friday, and we all left early for it. And I went left on 440, and they all went right on 440, and I went through Staten Island, and I showed up like significantly earlier than all of them. But I was a sub, so I was like, I don't want to, like, I'm going to go the faster way because I want to make a good impression because it's not my original gig.
Right.
And I ended up playing the whole thing anyway, which was funny too. But then, one time when I was teaching up north, I was on 287. This tractor trailer came across 287 and just like cut everyone off. I was an hour late to work, and I was also in a panic because I had to be like on my phone in my car being like, I don't know what this phone number is. But I told them, and it was fine. Because accidents happen. Things happen. You just have to tell people about it. That happened with lessons too sometimes, because like I told you, 40 minutes up north, there's always... on these major highways, there's always traffic.
Exactly. I mean, something goes wrong. The first person that you should be in touch with is whoever is in charge of where you're headed.
Yeah.
Because, yes, being late is bad, but being late with no sort of communication or anything is so much worse.
Especially because no one's gonna know if something happened to you. So, like, you could have been the one in the accident. No one's going to know, and you could go missing, and that's just a worrisome situation.
Yeah, you ever play worried? Playing angry is weird. Playing sad is effective. Playing worried is just... Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so punctuality and communication are huge. Attitude is huge. Making sure that you are prepared is the biggest thing.
We talked about that a little bit. And it's not so much just knowing your music preparedness, but that is very important. Make sure you have extra reeds, just in case they break, because they're notorious for it. Have cork grease, slide grease, valve oil,
strings,
extra mallets, picks, a tuner. Always have a tuner, please and thank you. Your band teacher will thank you too. What other things? Have your music. Oh my God. I was on a band trip in high school and someone left their music at the high school like 5 states away. And so one of the teachers, furious, was like copying the score and like cutting it and pasting it.
Oh no.
Always have your music.
Always have your instrument.
Yes.
We were we had marching band finals, and I was the drum major, so I only played half the show. But I was worried about drum major things, like waving my arms. I don't know. Making sure that I had like the right costume pieces, making sure that the band members were all prepared and everything. And we go and get on the bus, and we get a block and a half away from the school, and I go, "Where's my saxophone?" So I was like, "Stop the bus!" It was a close call, but I'll never forget it, because it's like, stop the bus. I had to, the band director had to let me in the front door of the school so I could run all the way back to the band room, grab my saxophone, run all the way back out the front door to re-meet the bus.
I've seen students do that too when I worked with the marching band. It happens. You gotta, make yourself a checklist. I'm a list snob. Like, I love lists. If you're afraid you're gonna forget something, make a list. Be like, do I have my instrument, my music, extra reeds, whatever else you're going to need. Black shoes, black socks. Don't wear white socks if you're supposed to wear all black.
Never underestimate the power of a pair of black socks in your cases.
Yeah. Make sure you're always aware of what you're supposed to be wearing, because it's not always concert black. Sometimes it's white and black. Sometimes it's a color with black bottoms. Sometimes, I don't know, it's a different color. I once had to wear navy pants and a white shirt. I hated that. Because I had to buy navy pants.
That's very specific.
Yeah, I was like, we all look like sailors.
I've never had to wear anything really other than like all black or black on the bottom, white on top. Most of the other stuff is like very like casual.
Yeah.
Being from a rock band sort of perspective. Everything else just kind of show up clothed. That's just a big one.
Please and thank you.
Now, I think a big part of preparedness is also making sure that your instrument is in tip-top shape. If you're a vocalist, making sure that you are in as good a vocal health as possible, making sure that you're, if you have been sick before, never underestimate the power of some hot tea with honey and lemon.
Oh, yeah.
The power of a good little bit of steam. Making sure that your instrument's, like we said, well-maintained in the first place, so that you don't have to worry about pads or full rods falling off of your instruments, strings popping, things of that nature.
A few weeks ago, I put my clarinet together and one of the tenon corks fell off, so I have to get that fixed. And I was like, oh man.
Oh no.
And then another cork on the side fell off, but that one's not that important. But yeah, take your instrument. Don't take them too often. There's like some hot debates that like you should take them every like 6 months. My repair guy said to take them whenever they need work. Or right before a recital or a big concert, too, just to make sure. But too often could, like, strip screws and really screw things up there.
I try to do it just at least once a year for all of my gear. I'd like to try to get it so that they all line up on the same time, so I have everything kind of rotating.
Pay for that?
Yeah, no, it's an expensive thing, but like if you're working consistently, you should set aside some of what you make working as a musician to pay for your maintenance.
Definitely.
I think the other biggest thing is like an attitude thing. To kind of touch back on attitude is being able to take criticism. People get very, very self-conscious. People get very defensive very, very quickly. It's just our natural tendencies. Like, we don't like being wrong. We don't like not pleasing people.
Yeah, it's keep an open mind, always. I sat in a master class once. It was a flute master class, and it was, I think, the principal of the Cincinnati Symphony, and she was talking about how you always should keep your flute in line. The lip plate should always be in line with the keys, but that's not how it works for me. It doesn't feel good that way. I don't like it. I can't make it the best sound that I can make. And my flute teacher in grad school was like, it doesn't matter. So I walked into my next lesson with her and I was like, what is going on? Like, she said, it has to be this way. But like, some people are going to tell you some things. Some people are going to tell you other things. It's good to get like a lot of things in your tool belt, see what people are doing, but do what's best for you. But also like, don't be afraid to try things and do things that people tell you about, because it could be, something else could be better for you.
Yeah, and a lot of times people who hire you to play for certain things, they have an idea in their mind of what they want to hear.
Yeah.
And I think when you're kind of contracted by somebody else, of course you want to sort of feed your own artistic vision. You want to feed like your inner artist and everything. But they also have a vision. They have something that they want to achieve, and they're going to be the best ones to be able to describe to you what it is that they want. So if they say something to you that maybe doesn't seem to make sense at first, or you know that there are definitely better ways of saying it, or you know what the way of saying it certainly is. You want to kind of work to the best of your ability to be as flexible as possible for them. So as far as musicianship goes, the best possible musicians, the best working musicians, are ones who obviously know their instrument, who have a well-trained ear, who have a good knowledge of theory, who can do scales, who can transpose.
You know what we didn't talk about with all of that?
What?
How to get that way? Is to practice. We didn't mention you should always be practicing.
I think that might have even fallen under the category of preparedness.
Yeah, we didn't. Well, yeah, we kind of lightly touched on it, but we never said the word practice once.
We did not say the word practice once?
I don't think we did.
No, we have to go back and check on all of that.
That's fine. Make sure you practice.
That's a huge one. And if you would like tips on how to practice, feel free to see one of our RMC teachers. But all of these strong musicianship arguments we have, all of these things that great musicians have, kind of pale in comparison to all of just the basic things of being a good professional person.
Yes. Having a good attitude, making sure you're prepared, making sure everything's in working order, which comes with being prepared. Make sure you're on time.
Make sure that you can take criticism well and be flexible. But I think all of these things combined make for some of the finest people to work with. I'm sure that as you're listening to this, you have somebody in mind that either embodies everything that we talked about today, where it's like, this is a person that I really want to play like, or really want to be like. Or I think even more likely, there's probably someone that you're thinking of that falls short on one or two of these categories.
Yeah, I think we're both thinking of a few people right now.
I think we all have those people that we've worked with or worked for that, as far as gigs are concerned, where we definitely they could have been more prepared or something like that. Yeah. And you always want to use these as learning moments about the different places where you yourself can kind of give a self-examination and say, well, these are the things that I'm noticing in other people. Let me kind of go in a little bit and check. Am I making sure that I'm doing these things? Because a lot of times these are the things that are going to get you the most work as a musician, that are going to make you the happiest as a musician, because it's also going to make the people around you the happiest to be around you.
Yeah. Well, that's all that we have for today. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come back soon, because
next time on the RMC Experience, EJ teaches us how to make minestrone soup using only his feet. Thank you so much for joining us on the RMC Experience. If you have any questions about anything that you've heard today, feel free to visit the RMC Studios website, seen right here.
Also, if you have any questions for me or Dan, our podcast website is podcast@rmcstudios.com.
Absolutely. If you have anything you'd like us to talk about, anything you'd like to see, any guests you'd like to see on the podcast, let us know at that email address.
Thank you.